In a city ruined by war, Chiron hides in the shadows, watching as Imperial soldiers destroy his home. The sounds of chains, cries, and smoke fill the air, igniting a fire in his heart. He realizes he can no longer stand by and watch. He must fight against the tyranny that has taken everything from him. Haunted by memories of his lost clan, Chiron chooses a dangerous path of vengeance, ready to face the risks ahead in his quest for justice. Chiron stood, hidden in the shadows, his heart pounding in rhythm with the chaos around him. The city, once filled with laughter and life, now lay in ruins. Imperial soldiers marched through the streets, their boots echoing like thunder against the cracked cobblestones. The air was thick with smoke, curling upwards from the homes that had been set ablaze. Each crackle of burning wood was a reminder of what had been lost, not just to the flames, but to the hands of those who wielded power without mercy. He watched as the soldiers dragged men and women into the darkness, their chains rattling like ghosts trapped in a nightmare. Muffled screams seeped through the walls like a haunting melody, filling Chiron with a deep sense of rage. How could he stand by and do nothing? He thought of his clan, his family, and the blood that stained the ground beneath him. The memory of their faces flashed in his mind, each one a painful reminder of the price of silence. "I can't just watch anymore," he whispered to himself, his voice barely audible over the cacophony. The decision crystallized within him, sharp and urgent. The time for action had come. He clenched his fists, feeling the heat of anger rise within him, igniting a fire that had long been smoldering. "They will pay for this," he vowed, his voice steadying as he spoke. The weight of the world pressed down on him, but he felt a flicker of hope. He could be the spark that ignited a revolution. As he moved through the shadows, Chiron's mind raced with thoughts of revenge. It was a dangerous path, one filled with uncertainty and peril. But the thought of his fallen clan pushed him forward. He stopped to listen, catching snippets of conversations among the soldiers. They laughed cruelly, unaware of the figure watching them from the darkness, a figure ready to turn their laughter into screams. "Did you see that one?" a soldier sneered, pointing at a house engulfed in flames. "That'll teach them to defy the emperor." The words twisted in Chiron's gut like a dagger. They spoke of power and dominance, but to him, it was a declaration of war, a war he was determined to fight. Suddenly, he remembered the faces of those he had loved, their laughter ringing in his ears. "No more," he thought fiercely. "No more will I be a silent observer." With each step, he felt the pull of vengeance stronger than ever. It was not just about revenge. It was about reclaiming his home, the place where he had once felt safe and loved. The weight of his past was heavy, but he would not let it crush him. He would rise. As he prepared to make his move, a sudden noise broke the tension, a crash, followed by a scream that sliced through the air like a knife. Chiron's heart raced. What if it was someone he knew? What if someone else was suffering at the hands of these monsters? He inhaled sharply, steeling himself for what lay ahead. "Enough!" he shouted, his voice rising above the din. The soldiers turned, their eyes widening in surprise. For a moment, time stood still. Chiron stood tall, a figure of defiance against the backdrop of destruction. "You will pay for what you have done. You have," he declared, his voice echoing in the stillness that followed. The soldiers laughed, but it was a hollow sound, one that did not reach their eyes. "One man against an army?" one of them taunted, stepping forward with a sneer. "You'll regret this." But Chiron felt no fear. Instead, he felt an overwhelming sense of purpose. "You underestimate the power of the oppressed," he replied, his voice steady, even as adrenaline surged through his veins. The fight was not just his. It belonged to everyone who had suffered at the hands of the empire. The soldier lunged, and in that moment, Chiron realized that he was no longer just a witness. He was a warrior, ready to reclaim his life, his home, and his clan's honor. As the first blow struck, Chiron knew that this was the beginning of something far greater than vengeance. It was a fight for justice, a fight for the echoes of his past that demanded to be heard. Chiron moved quietly through the dark alleyways of the city, his heart racing as he approached the hidden location of the secret meeting. The air was thick with tension, but the flicker of hope kept him going. He had heard whispers of a group fighting against the Empire's oppression, and he needed to learn more. As he neared the entrance, he paused to gather his thoughts. Inside, the room was dimly lit. Shadows danced on the walls as people gathered in small groups, their voices low but urgent. Chiron took a deep breath and slipped in, blending with the crowd. He found a spot in the back where he could listen without drawing attention. Every day, we lose more of our people. A strong voice echoed through the room. It belonged to a woman with fiery eyes and a fierce demeanor. Chiron couldn't help but focus on her. We cannot wait any longer for someone to save us. We must take action. As she spoke, the room buzzed with agreement. Chiron felt a spark of admiration for her courage. He wanted to learn more about this woman, but he also felt a sense of unease. What if she learned about his past? What if she didn't trust him? "Who are you?" a voice suddenly asked from behind him. Startled, Chiron turned to find the woman standing directly in front of him. I am just here to listen," he stammered, trying to keep his composure. "Listening is not enough," she replied, her gaze piercing. "We need fighters, not bystanders. What do you stand for?" Chiron hesitated. "I stand against the oppression of my people. I want to fight back." Her expression softened slightly, but there was still a hint of distrust. "Many say that. Prove it. Show us you are more than just words." Before he could respond, the meeting continued, and Chiron felt a pull towards her. This woman, Mara, had a fire in her that reminded him of his own anger. As they discussed strategies and plans, he found himself drawn to her passion. Later, as the crowd dispersed, Chiron approached her. "Mara," he said, unsure of how to continue. "I want to help. I need to help." She turned to him, her eyes searching his face. "You speak of vengeance. Is that all you seek? Revenge can blind you." "I lost everything to the Empire," he admitted, his voice shaking slightly. "My clan. They were taken from me. I want them to pay." Mara's expression changed. "I understand loss. My family is gone too. But if you let vengeance consume you, you might lose yourself in the process. We need to fight for our future, not just for revenge." Chiron felt the weight of her words. "What if fighting for my future means taking revenge?" he challenged. "Then you will be just as lost as the Empire wants you to be," she replied firmly. "We need to unite our efforts. We need to believe in a better world, not just the destruction of the old one." The tension between them crackled like electricity. Chiron could feel a connection forming, but doubt lingered in the back of his mind. Could he trust her? Could he let go of his desire for revenge? "I don't know how to fight for anything else," he confessed, looking down at the ground. "It feels like it is all I have left." Mara stepped closer, her voice softening. "You are not alone. We can fight together for something greater than ourselves. Let's channel that anger into something powerful, a movement for freedom, not just a quest for vengeance." Chiron met her gaze, and for the first time, he felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps redemption lay in this bond they were forming. Perhaps he could find a way to heal, even in the midst of his pain. "Okay," he said finally, determination rising within him. "Let's fight together, for our people, for a future." Mara smiled, and in that moment, Chiron felt a shift within himself. He was no longer just a man seeking revenge. He was becoming part of something larger. Together, they could forge a path towards liberation. Together, they could echo the call for vengeance, but also for hope. Chiron stood at the edge of the dark alley, his heart racing as he pieced together the truth. The whispers he had heard during his meetings with Mara now echoed loudly in his mind. The Emperor, the man sitting on the throne, was the one who had ordered the attack on his clan. Anger surged through him like wildfire, igniting a fierce determination that he had never felt before. He clenched his fists, his nails digging into his palms. "This is personal now," he muttered under his breath. The faces of his fallen family flashed before his eyes, their laughter now replaced by silence and shadows. He could no longer stand by. He had to act. Later that night, Chiron met with Mara in their secret hideout, a small room in a crumbling building that had once been a home. The air was thick with tension as he shared what he had discovered. "Mara," he said, his voice low but urgent. "The Emperor is the one who ordered the massacre. I can't just sit still anymore. I have to make him pay." Mara's eyes widened, a mix of fear and concern washing over her face. "Chiron, you need to be careful. This could lead you down a dark path. Revenge will not bring them back." Chiron shook his head, frustration building inside him. "But what else is there? They took everything from me. How can you ask me to forgive?" Mara stepped closer, her expression softening. "I'm not asking you to forgive. I just want you to think about what this revenge will cost you. Will it make you feel better, or will it change you into someone you don't want to be?" He paused, grappling with her words. It was a battle within himself, one he had not anticipated. "I don't know who I am anymore," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "All I feel is this rage." Mara reached out, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Then let's fight together. We can find a way to stop the Emperor without losing ourselves in the process. We can protect others." Chiron looked into her eyes, searching for answers. Her unwavering spirit ignited a flicker of hope within him. "You really believe we can do this?" "I do," she replied firmly. "But we need to be smart. We cannot let our emotions lead us into a trap." The next day, Chiron found himself in a narrow street, preparing for his first confrontation with the Emperor's henchmen. His heart pounded in his chest, the adrenaline coursing through his veins. He had trained for this moment, yet doubt lingered in the back of his mind. What if he lost himself in the fight? As the henchmen appeared, clad in their dark uniforms, Chiron felt a surge of fear and determination. He gripped his weapon tightly, recalling Mara's words. He had to fight for justice, not just for revenge. "Stand down!" one of the henchmen shouted, brandishing a weapon of his own. "You're outnumbered!" Chiron squared his shoulders, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "I'm not afraid of you. You serve a monster, and I will not let you continue this tyranny." The henchmen laughed, their arrogance evident. "And what will you do? Fight us all by yourself?" With a sudden rush, Chiron lunged forward, engaging in a fierce battle. Each strike was fueled by the pain of his past, yet he fought with a clarity he had not expected. He could feel Mara's presence in his mind, urging him to remain true to himself. As the fight intensified, Chiron began to question his actions. Each blow he landed felt like a step away from the man he once was. He could see the fear in the eyes of the henchmen, and for a moment, he hesitated. Was he becoming the monster he sought to destroy? "Mara!" he shouted, hoping she would hear him. "Help!" In that moment of vulnerability, he felt a warmth wash over him. Mara had arrived, her eyes fierce yet compassionate. "Chiron, remember who you are. This is not just about revenge." With her presence at his side, Chiron found strength. He fought not just against the henchmen, but against the darkness within himself. The battle became a dance of survival and moral clarity as he realized he could be a warrior without losing his humanity. As they finally defeated the henchmen, Chiron breathed heavily, his heart still racing. "I almost lost myself," he said, looking at Mara with gratitude and fear. "You didn't," she replied softly, placing a hand on his arm. "You fought for justice, not just revenge. That's the man I believe in. In that moment, Kirin understood the true battle he faced. It was not only against the Emperor and his forces, but against the monsters within himself. With Mara by his side, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. Together, they could strive for more than vengeance. They could fight for a future worth living for. As the moon hung high in the starry sky, casting a silvery glow over the ruins of the city, Kirin stood at the edge of a crumbling wall. His heart raced with the weight of his thoughts. Vengeance had consumed him, but now, as he looked down at Mara, who was tending to a small fire, he felt a flicker of doubt. Would his thirst for revenge endanger her? "Mara," he called softly, his voice breaking the stillness of the night. She looked up, her eyes filled with concern. "What is it, Kirin?" she asked, her brow furrowing. The firelight danced across her face, highlighting the intensity of her gaze. He hesitated, the words tangling in his throat. I'm not sure if I can keep you safe. Every time I plan an attack, I think of what could happen to you." Mara shifted closer, her expression softening. "We knew this path would be dangerous, but we are fighting for our lives, Kirin. For our people." "I know," he replied, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "But what if I lose you? What if my anger leads to your end?" Mara took a deep breath, the weight of his words settling between them. "I am not afraid to fight. I will stand by you, but you must be careful. Vengeance can blind us. It can make us reckless." He looked into the fire, watching the flames flicker and twist. "Sometimes I feel like revenge is the only thing I have left. It is what drives me." "It is what drives many," she said, her voice steady. "But it is a heavy price. Are you ready to pay it? You must think about what you truly want." Kirin clenched his fists, the turmoil within him rising. "I want justice for my clan. I want the Emperor to pay for what he has done." "And what about us?" Mara asked, her tone gentle but firm. "What happens to us if you let this revenge consume you?" He looked at her, the question echoing in his mind. As he searched her eyes, he saw not just the fierce fighter, but someone who had become a part of him. "I don't want to lose what we have," he admitted quietly. Mara smiled, though her eyes held a hint of sadness. "Then, we need to find a balance. We can fight, but we must protect each other too. That is the only way we'll succeed." Kirin nodded slowly, the realization settling in. His actions could endanger not just their mission, but the very bond they had formed. "You are right. I cannot let my anger cloud my judgment. Let's work together," she suggested, reaching out to squeeze his hand. "We can plan our moves carefully. We will strike when we are ready, and we will protect each other." Her touch sent a warmth through him, melting away some of the darkness that had settled in his heart. "I will do my best," he promised, feeling a sense of determination rise within him. "For you, and for our people." As they sat together, the fire crackling softly, they began to share their fears and hopes. "What do you dream of, Kirin?" Mara asked, her voice low and inviting. He thought for a moment, the vision of his clan flashing in his mind. "I dream of a world where we can live without fear. A place where our children can grow up in peace." Mara's eyes sparkled with hope. "Yes, and we will fight for that world. Together." The bond between them grew stronger, intertwining their paths as they took a moment to breathe in the cool night air. But in the back of Kirin's mind, the shadows of vengeance still lurked, whispering promises of power and justice. As dawn approached, casting a pale light over the horizon, Kirin realized that the greatest battle he faced was not just against the Emperor, but within himself. The price of vengeance was steep, and he had to decide if he was willing to pay it. Together, they would forge a new path, one that balanced their desire for justice with the love they had found in each other. The fight was far from over. But for the first time, Chiron felt a glimmer of hope amidst the chaos, knowing that redemption might be possible if he chose love over hate. The cold air of the night hung heavy with tension as Chiron and Mara huddled together in the dim light of their secret hideout. Shadows danced on the walls, echoing the uncertainty in their hearts. They had just received news that sent chills down Chiron's spine. A trusted ally had betrayed them. The Emperor had learned of their plans. Mara's eyes narrowed as she clenched her fists. "We can't let this go on. We need to act now," she urged, her voice steady despite the fear bubbling beneath the surface. Chiron nodded, but doubt crept into his mind. How can we trust anyone now? If we make a move, they'll know we're coming. We're exposed. "You think I'm afraid?" Mara snapped, her passion igniting. "My people are suffering. If we stay silent, we're just as guilty as the Emperor." Chiron felt the weight of her words. He understood her pain. The fire of her determination mirrored his own. But the stakes were higher than ever. What if we fail? What if we lose everything? Then we'll fight for what's left, together, she replied firmly, her gaze unwavering. We owe it to everyone who has suffered. As they plotted their next steps, the room filled with a sense of urgency. They sketched a plan, marking out the Emperor's stronghold on a worn piece of parchment. Each symbol represented a risk, but also a chance for freedom. "We need to get inside and gather evidence of the Emperor's treachery," Mara suggested, her finger tracing the lines on the map. "If we expose him, we can turn the tide." Chiron looked at her, the spark of hope reigniting within him. "You really think we can do this?" "I know we can, but we will need all our allies," she said, her voice softening. "Trust is important now, more than ever. Can you put aside your doubts?" He took a deep breath, the air thick with the weight of his thoughts. "For you, I will try. But if one more person betrays us..." Mara interrupted, her expression fierce. "We'll deal with it when it happens. Right now, we need to focus on the fight ahead." With their plans set, they began to prepare. They gathered weapons and supplies, adrenaline coursing through them. Every moment felt precious, every heartbeat a reminder of the urgency to act. As they stepped out into the night, the stars above seemed distant, yet they offered a glimmer of hope. Chiron felt a surge of determination. He was no longer just a man seeking revenge, he was part of something greater. The journey to the Emperor's stronghold was fraught with peril. They moved stealthily, shadows among shadows, until they reached the outskirts of the heavily guarded fortress. Chiron's heart raced at the sight of the towering walls. Each guard patrolling felt like a reminder of the risks they faced. "Stay close," Mara whispered, her eyes scanning the area. "We'll wait for the right moment." They crouched behind a crumbling wall, hearts pounding in unison. Chiron's mind raced, conflicted between the urge for vengeance and the desire to protect Mara. "If we get caught," he began, but Mara interrupted him again. "We won't get caught. Trust in our strength," she assured him, her confidence a steady anchor amidst the storm of his thoughts. Time seemed to stretch as they watched the guards move, waiting for the right moment to slip inside. Finally, the opportunity arose. A guard turned his back and Mara motioned for Chiron to follow her. They dashed across the open space, hearts pounding, adrenaline fueling their every move. Inside, the air was thick with tension. They moved swiftly, slipping through halls and avoiding detection. Each corner turned felt like a step deeper into danger, but they pressed on, driven by their shared goal. As they entered a room filled with maps and documents, Chiron felt a rush of triumph. "This is it, Mara. We can find the evidence we need here." Mara smiled, her eyes lighting up. "Let's make it count." They searched through the papers, uncovering details of the Emperor's plans, a sinister plot that could destroy countless lives. The weight of their discovery hit Chiron hard. This was not just about vengeance, it was about saving lives. Suddenly, footsteps echoed in the hall. We need to go now, Chiron urged, panic rising. Mara grabbed his hand, and they sprinted toward the exit, fear and hope intertwined in their hearts. As they fled, Chiron realized that this fight was not just for revenge, it was for a chance to build a future, together. The air crackled with tension as Chiron stood at the edge of the battlefield. He could see the Imperial soldiers, their armor gleaming in the dim light as they prepared for the final confrontation. His heart raced with a mix of anger and fear. Today, he would face the man who had taken everything from him, the Emperor. Mara stood beside him, her expression fierce yet vulnerable. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice steady, despite the chaos around them. Chiron nodded, but doubt flickered in his mind. "I have to do this. For my clan. For you." She reached out, squeezing his hand tightly. "Remember, Chiron, vengeance is not the only way. We fight for a future too." The words hung in the air, but the roar of battle drowned them out as the enemy charged forward. Chiron's instincts kicked in. He drew his sword and stepped into the fray, the clash of metal ringing in his ears. Each swing of his blade felt like a step closer to the justice he craved. "Chiron!" Mara shouted, her voice cutting through the noise. He glanced back to see her fighting valiantly, taking on 2 soldiers at once. He felt a surge of pride. "Stay close," he called, pushing through the crowd of enemies. As he fought, he could see the Emperor's banner waving in the distance, a dark symbol of all his pain and loss. With each enemy he struck down, the faces of his fallen clan flashed in his mind. "This is for you," he whispered, but the anger inside him began to shift. He thought of Mara, her laughter, her courage. Could he really destroy everything in pursuit of revenge? Suddenly, a figure stepped forward from the chaos. It was the Emperor, dressed in his dark robes, a sinister smile on his face. "Ah, Chiron," he taunted, his voice dripping with mockery. "Come to avenge your pathetic clan?" Chiron felt a rush of rage. "You took everything from me. You will pay for your crimes." The Emperor laughed, a chilling sound that echoed around them. "What do you think you can do? You are nothing without your vengeance." As they faced each other, Chiron's mind raced. He had trained for this moment, but now that it was here, he felt a conflict deep within. "Is this really what I want?" he thought. The Emperor raised his sword, and in that instant, Chiron saw not just an enemy, but a reflection of his own darkness. Mara's voice broke through his thoughts. "Chiron, don't lose yourself to him." Her words rang true, grounding him. He could feel the weight of his desire for revenge, but he also felt the warmth of what he could lose. With a fierce resolve, he lowered his sword slightly. "I won't let you control me." The Emperor's smile faltered, confusion crossing his face. "What are you saying?" "I choose my own path," Chiron replied, stepping forward. "You may have taken my clan, but you will not take my humanity." With that, he swung his sword, not to strike the Emperor down, but to defend Mara, who was now engaged in a fierce battle with another soldier. He felt powerful, not because of his anger, but because of his love for her. Together, they fought against the remaining soldiers. As the dust began to settle, Chiron looked around at the destruction. Bodies lay scattered, and the cries of the wounded filled the air. But amidst the chaos, there was something else, a chance for a new beginning. Finally, the last of the Emperor's forces fell, and silence enveloped the battlefield. Chiron dropped to his knees, breathing heavily. He felt the weight of what had just happened, not just in battle, but in his heart. Mara knelt beside him, her eyes searching his. "You did it, Chiron. You chose love over hate." He looked up at her, realization dawning. "I understand now. True strength lies not in revenge, but in the ability to forgive and rebuild." As they stood amidst the ruins, hand in hand, a flicker of hope ignited within Chiron. They had fought not just for vengeance, but for a chance to create something beautiful from the ashes of their past. Together, they would forge a new path, one filled with promise and the transformative power of love. Share this story if you believe that love can conquer even the toughest challenges. Leave a comment about a moment when you chose love over hate and how it changed your life. Don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring tales like this one.